7:05. Today is March 4th, 2015. I'm going to open up the Charlton Planning Board meeting for tonight. We have a few bills to pay. We have three from Graves Engineering. Total amount is $6,969.45. We have another bill for cell phone use at $88.28. And we have another bill for Karen LaCroix for $57.39. Danny Dowd for $276.48. And Stonebridge Printing Incorporated, $213.15. Do I have a motion to accept these bills as read?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Here we have payroll bills. Payroll goes from 3/9 to 3/14, 3/16 to 3/21, 3/23 to 3/28, and the last one is for 3/30, 4/4. This would be for Jane and Alan's payroll. Do I have a motion to accept the time frame of these payrolls?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've got some correspondence here.
You have to wait 7 minutes anyway, so.
Yeah. Being at a previous meeting, I haven't had a chance to look these over yet, so give me a minute. We have one correspondence for the board in regards to the 2014 Tree USA application. It says, I am writing because your community participated in the Tree City USA program last year, or has applied in the recent years, or perhaps somewhat distant past, and we have not received the application for the 2014 application.
Yeah, we don't have anything right now, and we were one of only 5 towns across the state last year who got the grant, so I think they want to rotate it among other communities anyway, and if you put in for something for a consecutive round, I think the odds are slim of getting anything. But if we can think toward the next round, they try to have a spring and a fall round, so if they do that, we'll have another one in the fall, otherwise it'll be a year from now. That doesn't affect the Tree City USA designation, that's completely separate, and that isn't coming up yet.
Did we ever put our new sticker up there by Slim Score?
No, you could follow up with Mr. Foskett if you'd like.
It'll be in the front of the,
Want me to follow up?
Sure.
He took it. He
took it.
put it
I'll
up.
take it.
Gone all there.
Well, you know, Foskett would have knocked it down.
I was just gonna say, if it got up, it could be fine.
We have a correspondence from CMMPO dated February 25th, 2014. It's the annual development of the 2016-2019 TIP project list. Any idea what's...
Yeah, nothing Charlton that the state's proposing. Our next one will be that when they do the 75% design for the eastern end of Route 20, which is a little in limbo right now, as I mentioned a few minutes ago in the meeting downstairs, that the engineering consultant for the state is working on it, but he has no idea when he can get it to the point to submit to the TIP. And we just keep in touch month to month at this point. They're a year and a half behind already on it. It should have been in a year and a half ago.
We got something from Mary Devlin, Assistant Administrator. all boards slash departments slash commissions slash committee meetings. Tuesday, March 24th, 2015, 6:30 p.m., Charlton Senior Center. Any idea what this one?
That's the every 6 months, the all boards meeting.
Okay.
I also made a copy for each board member, it's in front of you. Usually at least the chairman goes, but if other members wanna go too, and I can even post it, it's up to the board.
This would be March 24th, 2015.
Tuesday?
Yes, Tuesday night. It's at 6:30. I don't need a commitment right now, but if it's something you want to think about, maybe have, let Alan know, and we can go from there. The Leicester Planning Board has a public hearing notice, Tuesday, March 3rd, 2015, to discuss proposed amendment to the Leicester bylaw and zone chapter. Subject matter to proposed amendments is as follows. To allow change use, dimensions and special permit requests in a central business CB district, as well as change parking requirements in both the business CB district. Just looks like they're just changing some zoning bylaws.
Yeah, it's just nothing substantial.
That's really it, for correspondence. Not really sure what you wanna do with this one from Kurt.
Which one was that?
This is the one that we gave Kurt, occupancy and National Grid site plan.
Oh, yeah, that one and the one under it, just to update the board. National Grid finished that staging area and the artificial building slash tent.
Yep.
So, to get their certificate of operation from Kurt, they needed our engineer, Mike Andre, to do a walkthrough the other day. So this is the attached inspection report from Mike with my cover letter to Kurt saying that they're complete on all the site plan items and he can issue the certificate of operation. The second one, since we have a minute
Yeah.
before the hearing, I had a request from Thaddeus Skoda, who is, he and his wife are the principals of the subdivision off of Stafford Street. And they're negotiating with the attorneys for Mobil Exxon on a mitigation agreement for public water. So I had, at his request, provided him with a letter that he can provide to the attorneys on both sides, just confirming facts of the subdivision, what was designed in, even though he's currently on well water, he did design a main stub up front, and I confirmed that, and then the attorneys had requested information of what the covenant is all about, and I explained the restrictive covenant and that what you need to construct prior to getting lot releases. So it's just a factual confirmation of the design items for the lawyers in their negotiation. So that's what that's about. Again, if you can, when the time comes.
Yeah.
You just have it there, it goes.
Thank you very much.
How?
You're in the front.
The sign is,
Oh,
thank you.
I got a squeaky chair.
Okay, being 7:15, the town planning board has a public hearing in accordance with section 7.1.4, 7.2.1, and 7.2.7 of the Charlton zoning bylaws. The town planning board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, March 4th, 2015, at 7:15 p.m. in the planning board office of the George C. McKinstry Building, 37 Main Street, Charlton, Mass, on the site plan application for Burton Engineering on behalf of Solar Mart Projects Management LLC, 143 West Street, New Milford, Connecticut, 06776. Requesting approval for a proposed 3.0 megawatts commercial ground-mounted solar array and associated utility connections on approximately 16.54 acres of a 44.3 acre site located northerly off a Turner Road, westerly of Kinsey Road, Assessor Map 39, Block A, Parcel 2. Said property is zoned agricultural. Copy of the site plan applications are available for inspections at the planning board office and the town clerk's office during regular business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard should appear at this time and place designated. Alan, if you would give us.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most folks are new here for the hearing just for this. My name is Alan Gordon. I'm a town planner. I staff the planning board. And at the beginning of every site plan hearing on any project, I give about a 2 to 3 minute explanation of what this type of permit is all about. In Massachusetts, when a local planning board has site plan review, it's called legally an administrative review. The board's authority is over site design, technical issues such as stormwater and drainage, landscaping, the design layout, access, lighting, if there's any lighting. If there's a building, which there is not a building in this case, the board has no authority on the interior of the building. Parking, curbing, things like that. Commercial solar arrays are allowed in Massachusetts by right. A lot of people ask, why do we allow them to the degree that they're happening across the state? And just to speak briefly, years ago, the governor at the time created what they call a Section 3 exemption in the State Zoning Act that does not allow you to ban wind and solar, but they allow you to design them properly. So this type of permit we're allowed to have. They're proliferating in all communities, and we see them on a regular basis lately. The way this hearing will work is, in a moment, I'll turn it over to the applicant's engineer, and when I do, Michael, if you could keep your remarks to 5 to 10 minutes of a general overview. Then the board members will ask a few brief questions, and then I'll summarize our engineer's review. We have a peer engineer who works for the planning board, and I'll summarize where his review is on the design specifications, and then the chairman will turn it back to taking questions and comments from the people who are here. He'll explain the process of that in terms of stating your name and address and speaking for a couple of minutes. So with that, Mr. Loyne, if you could introduce yourself, and if you could give a 5 to 10 minute general overview, and then the board will move on through the hearing process. One other point, this hearing is not being concluded this evening. None of these projects get done in one night. This is an initial design review, and our engineer, as I'll explain a little later, is recommending some additional information and revisions that will continue to the next board meeting. But that said, Mr. Loyne, if you could move forward. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. My name is Mike Loyne from Burton Engineering Associates. With me tonight is Danielle Taylor from Seaboard Solar, who is basically the holding group, development group for this project. The site we are looking at is on Turner Road. Give you a little preview of where we are. Richardson Corner Road comes from Route 20 down through here. Then you take a left onto Turner Road, and this would be Turner Road here. This is the Mackenzie Road over in this area. This is the large power line easement that runs right across Richardson Corner Road through the rear of the properties. The site we are proposing on would have a driveway access off of Turner Road. Basically, it would be up on top of the hill. It's in a rear of some residential lots up along Mackenzie Road. What we've designed is the solar array would be buffered around the perimeters with existing trees to remain along the property lines. And then underneath the panels, it's not like it's gonna be a complete paved or stoned area, similar, like Route 20, you go by, it's all crushed stone underneath the panels. This here, it's gonna be a low-growth solar mix that's been specially designed for this type of site, so it's like a mowing, once a year type of mowing, and it gives more of a natural habitat where you're not just making a large impervious area. We have an access road coming off of Turner that goes up to the top of the hill. There'll be a gravel drive on the southerly side with a cul-de-sac that would meet the fire department's turnaround radius. And then there'd be another cul-de-sac that splits the site for emergency access, and then one up at the top. The site itself, generally, if I could show you the existing site. The existing site is unique. It has a knoll in this area, a sort of a valley, flat area. There's a slope up in here. It slopes from Turner Road up to the top of the hill behind the houses in this area. What we've proposed on doing is utilizing 16 acres of cleared area, 14 acres within the fenced area that would be grass, and for our solar array. This would be roughly 3 megawatts of DC solar power output. And we are proposing on a little bit of a lot line swap where this back parcel would be combined with an existing parcel of land that's owned by Mel Glickman and Dan Prouty and Mike Chesla. And the front parcel is would remain the parcel that we're purchasing. So it would be basically 2 separate systems, 1.5 megawatt systems on one piece, but it would be still considered one project. When we did the project, looking at, we've done many projects like this throughout the state, and we're always concerned on the neighbors, the impact of the neighborhoods and so forth. What I've done on this area here, this is the project, and I've sort of done a blow-up overview of the area, and I tried to look at the nearest residences and houses and the impact and visibility. I know there's questions on that. So if we can look at, we'll start right down at the bottom here, the house down in front, looking up the hill. That would be section C, which section C is the house. We've got, from the property line, there's 190 feet of treed area, and then there's another 122 feet until you see the solar panels. So and plus there's a knoll, the way the grade grows, there's a knoll, so the visibility from down in around the residential house area, visibility in the back would not be seen from that house. We looked at the house on the other side of the opening right here, which is section D, from this house looking back through the field. And cross section D would have the house, the backyard, and then there is actually, they have 223 feet to the back property, of woods to the back property line, and then there's a area of another 86 feet to the back solar panels. So you're talking from the back of the house to the closest solar panels, 345 feet. We also looked at, there was one of the abutters over here from Richardson Corner Road, looking from that house across. There's a large perennial stream, a wetland system through here, and we did a cross section from that, showing the house. That it actually goes downhill behind the house about 100 feet, and then there's a stream crossing, a wetland about 70 and 140 feet, and then it's 520 feet of trees, wooded trees, till we get to the clearing limits, and then there's a knoll over the top. It's a knoll over the top for these panels. So there's no possibility that from Richardson Corner Road that the solar array would be seen. The site, as Mr. Gardner will talk about, we have sent this to the town's consultant engineer. It came back with some concerns and some additional information in regards to
I'll get into
drainage.
that. I'll get into that.
Okay, in regards to drainage. What we've done is, we have to design by state regulations to meet the Mass Stormwater Policy, and there's some additional information that's needed that we will be preparing on the plans. The last part of it, part of it would be during construction. In part of the set, under EPA approval, EPA regulations, we have to file a notice of intent for a construction permit for the construction that would show areas of stockpile, storage trailers, where the unloading areas are gonna be, laydown area for materials, temporary drainage and erosion control protection throughout the site. So we've shown that on this plan that's called EC1. It's erosion control plan 1, and that gets submitted to the EPA as part of prior to construction. A lot of questions, if you're not familiar with solar panels are non-hazardous. The transformers are made with vegetable oil. There's not, like years ago, it used to be oil with PCBs. There's none of that. All the state studies and all the state documents where there's no hazards to neighboring area, the groundwater, in regards to solar. There's no, question that comes up is electromagnetic interference. There is no electromagnetic interference that would be created from this site. I mean, you probably have more from the existing power lines than you would ever have from this site. On that note, just a lot of times, once the site is built, you might have a vehicle access the site, a pickup truck or a van, electrician's type van. At first year, maybe once a week. The first couple months, probably a couple times a week. But then it's like every 3 to 4 weeks, you'll have someone that would access the site to troubleshoot, make sure everything's fine, and review the site. During construction, we have shown on the layout plan, the erosion control plan and the EPA plan, all vehicles and everything there would be no parking, unloading, or anything off of Turner Road, except for the initial machine to make the driveway to get up into the rear of the site. And the construction time frame would, on a project this side, would generally be probably 4 to 6 month time frame from start to finish, from tree clearing to being electrified. Right now, we're seeing probably a little quicker now that there's companies out there that are used to putting these in. The efficiency's gone a lot better, so we're seeing the time frames come down during construction. On that note, I think I could open it up to the board if.
Any question on the board? The fence that's gonna go around this, how high is the fence gonna be?
It's a 7-foot high chain link fence that's required by electric code, and we have it 6 inches off of the ground at the bottom. The reason we're doing that is to not inhibit the smaller habitat that would traverse the area. It still would allow smaller animals to be able to go into the site, around through the site. It just keeps most of the deer out and anything bigger, and try to keep kids or anyone else out of the site.
Another question is, which way is the power gonna be leaving this site? Is it gonna go down Turner Road, or is it going out to the?
The power
extension line?
leaving this site is actually going to go out Turner Road and tie down into Richardson
So will they be?
on the existing utility poles.
So they'll be using the existing pole?
Yeah, or they would put a new pole right next to it. If the pole, depends on how old the pole is, they would upgrade the pole if need be.
You're showing like a real heavy green vegetated line. Is that a natural?
That's a tree clearing limit line.
Which is how big?
Excuse me, where, So the board has questions for us, just keep that in mind.
That would be the perimeter limit of the clearing on the site, which is 16 and a half acres.
Roughly how much of the rest of the site, what's the acreage of the rest of it that you're not touching?
I think it's 40 some odd acres is the entire site here. But actually, part of this site is on the other side of the power lines, up in the back over here also.
Could you go back to the drawing where it's showing, vegetation to the neighbors?
Yep.
So where the tree line stops, there's still
There's
property owned by the developer?
roughly 100 feet of non-treed areas. That's for shade buffers
Mhm.
from the large trees, so when the sun comes at an angle, it doesn't shade the solar panels.
And then the last question I got is, on detention ponds.
Yep.
Basically, the water will stay on the property and soak into go back in.
Yeah, under Mass Stormwater regs, our pre-existing conditions, we can't, by building the gravel roadways and change it from wooded to grass underneath the panels, we can't increase the runoff to the wetlands or neighboring properties. So we have to design the pond that will, during a rain event, the water will come up, and then over a 48-hour period, it will go out gradually. We designed the stormwater ponds that will be 1, 2, 3, and a small one, 4, and a small one down to catch the water from the driveway coming down the road. We actually looked at the previous solar facility that had the driveway with the water, especially with the icing, and we looked at that and we said we wanted to make sure that we address all the stormwater.
You mean one of the other projects?
One of the other
Which one
projects.
was it?
The one on Carpenter Hill.
Oh, the Nexam.
Nexamp one. They had icing issues because of drainage along the driveway. We made sure we showed swales along the driveway into a basin to make sure that we catch any water. So we're all learning from each other as part of these projects as solar develops.
I just have one. Mike, getting back to that buffer, so we just, with the trees in the closest house, so what is it, 100 feet of natural vegetation from the closest house?
Well,
Is that pretty much what?
oh
the
yeah,
figure is?
from the closest house, it's well over, it's
Okay.
well over 100
It's
feet.
natural vegetation, nothing to be planted?
No,
or the-
no,
okay.
and this little side, we're actually, this area is roughly 70 feet to 60 feet along this little side. The only area that it does get a little tight was about 30 feet from the property line. It's natural vegetation, but then it's completely wooded along the back going up to it also.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mike, how often does it get mowed?
Right now, it'd be a maintenance once a year. The grass grows at 8-inch maximum. It's a special seed mix that grows to about 8 inches, and it maintains that site. It's both shade and sun tolerant. Hydro Seed of Oxford created with the seed company a solar seed mix for us for these type of sites.
And does it matter if they have snow or not? Does anybody come in and remove the snow at any point?
Well, they haven't down the road. I'm sure everyone's gone by. We've all been going by and watching it. Generally, this winter's been a sort of an anomaly. We really had this many storms back to back. Usually, I've been watching the ones down the road also. It goes, the snow settles, they fall off a day or two, it slides off, and they're clear.
The building commissioner, Kurt Meskis, was telling me this morning that in a normal, not like what we're doing right now, but normally that they're designed with the material and the angle that in between routine snowstorms, that it falls off very normally. It's very interesting.
It was interesting, I found out, and really it's a learning process, that a small area of the panel that receives sun actually heats up the glass panel on it, and that creates a little bit of heat, and that makes the snow slide off. So the littlest top of the panel that might be showing after a snowstorm, as soon as the sun hits at it, it heats the whole panel. It sort of radiates. It was because I had that same question on the snow.
One more question.
Yep.
On stormwater, I think the Graves report had some comments on where the discharges are gonna be, and this might get changed a little bit.
Yeah, as soon as you're done with the questions, I can address that.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm all set. Thank you.
This is all on one lot?
This is, right now, it's one lot, but we're creating a second lot. We're gonna take this piece here and combine it with this lot over here. And so basically, the solar company will own this piece and lease this piece from Dan Prouty, Mel Glickman. It would be a lease.
That's what Bruce Forrestal and Solar Flare did the same thing at the one at the corner of Richardson Corner in Oxbow. For their investment purposes, they own one side and lease the other. It's something to do with taxes.
The whole solar thing, there's.
So
there's-
physically, it's one project, but at the Registry of Deeds, they'll have a lot line, property line down the middle of the solar array field, and that way legally it's a half lease, half ownership.
Okay, I'm gonna open up to the public. If you'd please state your name and your address, and try to keep your questions short.
Jim Law, Liberty, 45
sorry.
Turner Road. Can you bring up the page that, I think it's 2 pages down, that showed the tree line, and then show us how that reflects on this, right here where the 100 feet is? That stops.
No. Questions and then later I can do the peer review.
Okay, which, were you
So up in
looking
the
up there?
upper top left, you have that tree line.
Up here?
No, very top of the drawing.
Yeah?
You show, no, up higher.
Oh, up here, yeah,
Up here.
okay.
So you show where the tree stops. Could you show where that view is coming from on the front page?
Okay, this here is section AA, so if we look at section AA, that would be from this point over here. So that would be from the house, you go right down this straight line, through the back here, and right where you see this tree line is this tree line right here.
So there's no trees from there?
From here to the panels, there's no trees.
From there to Turner Road?
Oh, no,
From that line down?
Turner Road's way over here.
No, it's not right down.
Oh, actually, okay, no,
It's right
Richardson's
down
here,
there.
Turner Road's here.
Mike, you were coming in from Mackenzie.
Yeah, I was coming in from
You're coming in from
Wait, are you looking off of Turner Road?
Yes.
Okay, Turner Road, so we'd be looking at one of these cross sections, which would be on the next page. So I'll take the one,
Okay, but you're not showing anything from that line down.
I don't know if I follow you.
Can I? Sorry. Okay, so the tree line goes from here this way, so there's no trees from here this way.
There's no trees from here, right up and through this stretch right here, right through this stretch.
Straight stretch, so this
Yeah.
house and this piece of property and this house right here. will
This
have-
is trees right here. This is all trees in this section here.
Right there.
Yeah.
So where is it, so where is that?
That is this section here,
Where is this over here?
right here. This is a cross section.
Okay, so what house is that?
That's this house over here.
I'm looking at this
You're
direction.
You're looking at this, look at it this way. So the house is on the right,
Okay,
and you're gonna come up through here.
okay,
Okay, this tree line is this tree line right here,
okay.
and then there's a grassed area, and then the solar panels
So
are
there
right
are,
here.
so there are trees along this edge.
There's trees along this hill ledge,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
right up through here. There's 90
Okay.
feet, 90 feet of trees along that edge right here.
Okay, so I've lived on this road since like 2000, and I know that a couple of times the little stream over here is washed out, and now you've just created less vegetation to absorb the.
If I could take a moment then and get back to the peer
Let me
review.
understand how this works.
To answer the gentleman's question, and also, before we move on with other questions or comments from the
Yeah.
public, the peer review addresses that. Michael made a remark that I'll repeat, that under federal EPA and state Massachusetts environmental laws, any project that comes before the planning board has to be designed so it does not increase the runoff off the site. Our engineer is Michael Andrade from Graves Engineering in Worcester, and he reviews it. So what Michael did is he reviews this plan that proposes 5 detention basins and a drainage system that goes into that, so there is no runoff off the site. to summarize our peer review, Michael made about 3 dozen comments, and they're very routine, and he's asking for 2 things. He wants some additional detailed information related to drainage swales and the design of those detention basins, and he would like some more data related to the runoff so he can confirm back to the board in the revised plan that it meets those federal and state requirements. So this comes up at every hearing on any type of project. People say, I'm very concerned that what they're doing by taking off natural vegetation and such and making it more impermeable is gonna cause erosion and runoff off the site, and our responsibility with our engineer is prior to approval to make sure it's designed to not allow that to happen. So that's, to answer your question the long way around, that's part of what our engineer is immersed in right now.
It's still being reviewed.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
When we continue at another night and we have a revision, our engineer will be confirming, hopefully, that they've either complied with that or he still has issues and he wants it reviewed again.
So the other erosion, I think most of us on this, that live on this side are concerned about, because this is up on a hill. Some of these are very steep hills with retaining walls back here, that there won't be any erosion coming this way.
Exactly, in all directions, our engineer looks at north, south, east, west on every side. Yes.
I have a couple of questions.
Could you state your name and?
Deborah
address?
Pettiford, 89 Richardson Corner Road, and I've been there since '92. In case anybody knows. And first question I have, now this is zoned agricultural, and they're gonna put in this solar array. There's 18 acres of land that they say they're gonna use out of a total of 43 or 48. Does the zoning change? And if it's changed to industrial, what happens in the future with the rest of that land, once this is no longer considered agricultural land?
Alan could answer that
Yeah.
question.
We hear often people say 80% of the town is in the agricultural zone, and doesn't that mean it's agricultural? No, agricultural was a title in 1987 when the planning board wrote the first zoning bylaw. They titled the name of the zone agricultural because the town was generally characteristic as you drove around town, an agricultural town back then. That does not mean that this is an agricultural zone in terms of farming or land use in that respect.
Well, it had been a tree farm.
Ma'am, if I can, please,
Yeah.
and then you can respond. You go by the use table, and table 2, the use table, has 7 columns, 7 different type of districts. So you look through this agricultural zone column, there are many, many, mostly non-agricultural uses, from single-family home to solar energy to other non-residential uses. The bylaw allows solar energy, commercial solar energy arrays via site plan in every zone in town, which is general across the state. So even though it's a non-agricultural, non-residential use, it's completely allowed and viable under this zoning bylaw and other towns too. The second part of your question, what happens to the rest of the land, that would be up to the property owner in the future. They could design something to come in under whatever that column allows in the zoning bylaw. They could never develop it possibly. They could do single-family homes. They could come back with something else allowed. We just don't know. However, if there's a lot of wetlands, both within the wetland and within a buffer, they can't go near that. So looking to the west, there's quite a bit of wetland and wet area that is non-developable. I just don't know the acreage total of it. I think if there's any potential further developments, it would be hugging pretty close to the west of the solar array that he's showing.
So I don't have to worry about it being changed to industrial and having a tire factory built in there?
No, the only 2 industrial zones we have in town are called BEP and IG,
Mhm.
and the planning board has deliberately only allowed those along Route 20 and along Route 169, and we would never allow them off of the main highways. Plus, people who operate businesses in that industry are only looking to be on main highways anyway. They're not looking to be on country roads. So you don't have to worry about a rezoning for heavy industry at all.
Okay, and you answered my other question, because currently, the large stream there I live in front of it, that is a big wetland.
Yes.
And that was deemed a conservation area for an endangered species.
Yes, it's actually noted on one sheet
And
that it's endangered
so I just wanted
species.
to be sure that the endangered species is being fairly well protected as well.
Yes, under State Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, conservation reviews that. Where are you with conservation?
Right now, we are outside of conservation's jurisdiction on all their buffer zones
Okay.
on this one. So we're
You mean your development is proposed outside of the
Outside of
buffers?
it.
Far
Correct.
enough away that they're not gonna be impacted.
Yep.
Because there's two kinds of beavers that live down there. There's bank beavers.
Oh, I know.
It's.
Thank God there was one, because that's the only way I was able to cross the wetlands at one point.
Yes.
Is across the top of the beaver
The
dam.
beaver
Otherwise,
dam,
it would
yep.
have been a long walk for me.
Okay, do you have
Thank
any
you.
other-
You
any
answered
other-
my question.
Shellback, 40 Turner Road. I live directly across from that driveway. What am I gonna look at? A road, dirt road going up in the woods with gates all over it?
It would be a driveway that would, 14-foot wide driveway that would go up the hill like a normal gravel driveway. It would look like a residential house driveway. The only thing at the bottom, right about 50 foot in, there would be like a Corps of Engineer type gate. The yellow one, just the bar gate, and all the fencing gates and everything are up and back, way up and back on top of the
Are you gonna
hill.
put a pond in there too? A retention pond
There's-
right across from my house?
There's a small area that would just catch water during a rain event and drain it out.
Another question is, what are you gonna do with all the stumps off that site when you start ripping the stumps out?
By law, they have to be, usually they're ground. They're ground and used as slope retention, or they're ground and sold off-site.
Because the last time they did a site, on Richardson's Corner, they took all the stumps, they hauled them to Oxford, and they illegally dumped them on property. And nobody did nothing about it.
Yeah, I mean, this one here, I know the other sites that this company has done, they've taken and they've taken the stumps and they've brought in a stump grinder and use it as slope retention and on the buffer zones around the site.
Lady in the back first. State your name.
Alan Trammell, 27 Turner Road. Who will be the owner of the 40-plus acre parcel?
Danielle, this is Danielle Taylor.
I'm from Seaport Solar. We're the company that's developing this project. Right now, we would be, or actually our holding company, which is Solar Mass Project Management, I think it's Series 32, would be the owners of this property at this point.
Follow-up or two. Between section C and D, there's a very small parcel. What would be the engineering planning for that,
This
for that parcel?
parcel in between
Yes.
here. Actually, we weren't looking at doing anything. They're not even touching it at this point.
At this
I
point.
mean, there's no with our design for the solar array.
Yeah.
I mean, if the solar array is approved, there's no reason to do anything with that.
And behind parcel C, you said that I would have 122 feet from the edge of the property before I would see the array, or the glare from the array. But it's only 30 feet before I see the gravel road and the staging area, is that correct? Parcel C.
You're looking right through here, section C. Yeah, so section C is this one up here.
Yeah, it said
So-
I had 190 feet of trees.
There's
and
190 feet of trees.
And 122 feet before the solar array.
Correct.
But the gravel road is going 30 feet behind that wall, is that correct?
The gravel road would be, there's actually a detention basin. No, there's a detention basin in here, and then the gravel road is roughly 100 feet from the existing tree line over here.
Is that where the wall is?
See if I can figure that out. That section of wall right through here. We're looking up through here, yeah, because the cross section goes here, up through this basin, up through here. Looking at a straight line right behind the house, right through the house. So the wall would be roughly up in this area, so there'd be about 40 feet of large trees, then you get into your clearing and detention basin. And then the gravel road is on the other side of the basin.
If you don't mind, we're actually running late. We do have another public hearing going. So if somebody has a question that's needs to be answered tonight, we just make it real quick.
Yeah, would we be notified?
We're continue this public hearing, again, till March 18th. This is just a preliminary, introductory to the public. If we could just get one question out of this gentleman, state your name and address.
Dan Fields, 41 Turner Road. On that first drawing, I was just curious, when you look at your access road coming off of Turner Road, what is the footage from the property line on the right to where that road goes in?
Okay, yep, from this property over to here. 1 inch equals 80. That's, looks like it's a little bit over an inch, so you're probably at least 80 feet right there.
So is there gonna be room for a buffer and a retention pond right there?
There-
Between the road and the property line?
There's gonna be a little buffer between the road, because as you know, it goes up quick, then there's a little plateau. In fact, the previous loggers use this, I think, as a staging area. It almost looks like to me, because or an area where they park their equipment, because it's a flat area. That's where the basin would go, right into that flat area. And we plan on utilizing that existing cleared area that showed up on the aerial topography. So we're putting it right in that, the basin would be right in that little area. We don't plan on taking the trees, big trees down along the side of the road or anything. Only enough for the driveway access and the sloping for the driveway.
Like, these plans are available during the day. Alan and Jane will probably kill me, but if
Okay.
you wish to come in during the day.
What are the hours?
We weren't.
What are the hours that the office is open?
From Monday through Thursday, when the building is open, from 7:30 to either 4 or 5 p.m., depending on the day. You can also call ahead and we can work out for when it might be reasonable, or make arrangements for you to be able to see it if the building commissioner's office is open later and we're not, type of thing. We're very amenable for that.
So what I'm getting at is if some of you people have a question about where the vegetation stops and stuff like that, we are gonna continue the public hearing till March 18th. And we do have time between now and then to come into the office, look at the plans a lot closer, one-on-one, and then on the 18th, you could bring your questions back up again.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a question to Mr. Moyne through the chair.
Sure.
Timing-wise, again, to make progress for everyone's interests, by the 18th, we would want to receive a revision from you that would give enough time for Mike Andre, our engineer, to review it in time to comment for the 18th. So how soon can you give us a revised submittal based on the comments he already issued?
We have the revision comments all completed, except for the ones that relate to the testing, the groundwater testing.
Then we need whatever you've got as
Yep.
soon as possible.
Yeah,
to
that
give him
will
time
be done
to
before
turn
the end,
around.
before the end of this week. They're
Okay.
already completed the letters, the review letters all done also.
Okay.
One other thing is, if there isn't a butter, I know Danielle had sent out a letter to abutters. If there is a concern, I could come out and meet with you, and we're more than willing to meet with an abutter if there's a question, and do a one-on-one. Danielle, it's
If I can
available
repeat
also.
that right now, your phone number.
Yeah.
Mike is Burton Engineering in Southbridge. He's 508-765-0195 to be contacted for that if anyone wants. Mr. Chairman, I can give a time right now because of our next meeting. We have a 7:15 public hearing on another application that is very brief, literally probably a 10-minute review. So we can schedule this at 7:25 p.m., 2 weeks from tonight, the 18th, to continue this hearing in this room. We don't send out notices beyond the first notice, but if you want to call us and double check if you need to, we'll also post it with the town clerk and on the town webpage, reminding people that it'll be March 18th at 7:25 p.m. to continue.
Do I have a motion to continue the public hearing till March 18th?
So,
All in favor?
Aye.
This time I'd like to close I'd like to continue this public hearing to March 18th. Thank you for coming in, and we do have another one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's fine.
Well, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Mike, if you could take it outside in the hall so we can clear in the next few minutes for another hearing. Thanks.
Or the one across the street.
That's the same problem. Maybe there's another one right after.
Actually, I forgot, these ones we have for Snake Hill.
Snake Hill, that's what
You took up seats for,
I told her, it was her idea, I said,
Nothing
"It's
wrong,
okay here."
nothing wrong with that.
You know what, they would have stood up if somebody else from the neighborhood needed a seat.
Right, right.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We can just put this over up there. Yeah, I think that's there for sale.
Now you know what questions.
Yes.
Got 1 second, really fast. When you mailed us your fees, thank you very much, but there were 2 checks that weren't, we don't know. You gave us a check for $750, and then there was a second one.
It's an extra large.
It's all the same number.
And this isn't related to any of our charges for your application either.
We were wondering where these checks were.
What were they for? We're just
They're
curious.
for, the town, we're doing 2, the town of Leicester.
Oh, Lester?
Leicester.
Oh, 'cause that says Cheltenham on it.
Yeah, we told them, we wondered where these fees went.
Is,
There they are.
They're not.
you feel better?
Yeah.
My name's Skip. I got the notice here.
Yeah, you're good to go.
All right, today being March 4th, 2015, being 7:50, a little late for the 7:30 hearing. In accordance to section 7.1.4, 7.2.1, and 7.2.7, Charlton zoning bylaws, the Charlton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, March 14th, 2015, at 7:30 p.m. in the Planning Board office at the George C. McKinstry Building, 37 Main Street, Charlton, Mass. On the site plan application by Klein Felder Engineering on behalf of Polar Power Secure Solar, 300 Kitty Hawk Drive, Morrisville, North Carolina, 27560, requesting approval for a proposed 1.0 megawatt commercial ground-mounted solar array and associated utility connections on approximately 8.64 acres of a 64.15 acre site located northerly off of Snake Hill Road, westerly off of Carpenter Hill Road, assessor map 44, block B, parcel 9, said property is zoned agricultural A. Copy of the site plan applications are available for inspections at the planning board office and the town clerk's office during regular business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard should appear at the time of the public hearing. Alan, if you could open this up for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll repeat, but I won't be as lengthy. Again, for the record, this is administrative site plan review, and the board's parameters are technical. Stormwater management, site visibility, fencing, lighting if there was lighting, which there isn't. If there was a building, again, we don't get involved in the interior. And I think for the record, I don't have to go into much more detail, but again, administrative site plan review means the board is not determining whether or not this is allowed. It is allowed under zoning. The issue is the board has authority and responsibility on the design layout, and you've already heard from some folks who were here for the previous hearing, the types of technical engineering issues. Again, if you could spend no more than 5 to 10 minutes with a general overview, less if you want to, and then the board will ask a few questions, and then I'll briefly summarize our engineer's peer review, and then the board will open it to anybody's questions or comments. So with that, you could introduce yourself all the way from South Carolina. I will add one thing. This particular project, as our applicant will tell you in a minute, is actually being proposed to be developed, owned, and operated by National Grid itself. They will be keeping this one, as
Correct.
opposed to the previous one was a private solar company, with that said.
Correct. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for your time this evening. Thank you guys for coming out and taking a look at the plan with us. What we've got here is we've got a solar site. It's approximately 8.5 acres, 8.6 acres on a 54-acre tract.
Do you want this to put on the easel?
Yeah. Stick it up. Hopefully it'll sit up.
Maybe one of these boards, you know what I mean, could be put behind it.
Here, put my board backwards.
Just Tracy's board.
Thank you.
Hey, Alan, I got one.
Alan.
You got
Yeah,
it.
that was from downstairs before.
You need another one, or one enough?
I think
No, we had enough.
There you go.
Step back out of the way. So what we have is about an 8.5 acre site on a 54-acre tract. We're bound by wetlands on the east side and the north side, and then we have the power line and power easement on the west side of the site. So we're kind of confined to our site area here. We've set it back as far back from the main road, from Snake Hill Road, as possible to prevent from any shading from neighboring trees, neighboring property owners across the street from shading from the trees on our site, and to maximize our yield for our site. We're gonna be clearing most of anything located within the green area or green markup. We're actually clearing that, and then we're gonna have a little detention basin set back from the road and from the array to capture any potential stormwater runoff. We have a little bit of a swell, proposed swell along the access drive, and we're going to take everything over to the basin along the backside, and that will be a permanent structure, and it will allow for any rain event to fall. When water falls, it's going to fall, drain from the east side westerly into our channel back to the detention basin back here in the back. Other than that, it's a pretty standard small site. National Grid will be the ultimate owner. Our client is Power Secure Solar. They will be the EPC contractor, electrical power contractor, who will be building it. They've done, I'm guessing, at least 50 or 60 of these projects throughout the U.S. Anywhere from I think this is a 1 megawatt site up to about a 50 or 60 megawatt site, which is a lot larger than this. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please.
Yeah, the board first will ask you questions.
Okay.
The orange line, again, is what?
That is our permanent fence line.
Permanent fence line?
Correct.
And that'd be a chain link fence?
That would be a chain link fence. I think we're proposing a 6 or 7 foot chain link fence with a 1 foot barbed wire on top.
What type of vegetation is going to be underneath this one?
They're just going to have grass.
So it'll be a grass?
It'll be grass, yes. And someone will come out monthly or quarterly to maintain it.
I just would like a little more clarification. You're showing by Snake Hill Road, the green line.
The green line.
Correct, going this way. Is there a reason that you can't keep more trees between Snake Hill and the solar farm?
From here to here?
Yes.
So the reason our client would like to have this is any tree along this side, they model it and they want to maximize their production. And any tree, I'm guessing any tree that they have here could potentially shade their arrays.
What would be the distance? I mean, from Snake Hill Road to the solar farm? I mean, what are we talking, 100 feet, 200 feet?
I think they typically like to have about 150 feet or so between the arrays and any potential obstruction.
If I could add in, if I could explain, and I think the concern is a little uniform here. We've done a lot of these already.
Right.
And we've never had one that cleared it that far away, and I know you've just used the phrases like and prefer. I would request through the board that prior to the next hearing session, you provide us with some actual engineering documentation of how necessary clearing distance is from the panel, because no offense, I'm not buying it. We've never had anybody clear that far away, and it just seems that for the others, if they put their project here, from the front of the array to Snake Hill, they'd be clearing about half that distance from the other
Okay.
projects we've gotten. So we really need either you voluntarily adjust it or provide us with some documentation for Graves Engineering to review. I think it is, I mean, the chairman brought it up because it was kind of obvious.
Okay.
I'd like, and I'd also like to see if there's a way of doing it on the other side too, cause I see there are a couple of the houses.
Over here, I think
There is a
they
house
actually
there.
own over further, and I think this is just a gravel road for one of their
Is
pieces.
there a
Yeah,
residence?
no, there's no buildings there. Years ago, there was an old farm there. I think for some reason it's
Yeah.
still showing up, but there's nothing there now.
Okay.
The
That's
wires
the-
are over here.
That's the access road out to, the power lines.
So,
Yeah.
you're showing, excuse me,
Yeah.
Carpenter Hill Road
It's
is
way up
over
there.
here,
Yeah.
way over here.
Yeah, you won't be able to see it from your house.
You have cut all this out too, up the
No,
the hill road?
sir?
No,
Excuse me, sir?
This is
There's a power line there.
raised out, excuse me.
Think we're
Wanted to
sorry.
orientate him a little bit.
Yeah.
Sir,
You're way up.
could you, guys, audience?
You're up
Okay.
further. You can see it, yeah.
Bob, can we hold your thoughts for a few minutes, all right? The board is still asking questions at the moment.
okay.
How many retention ponds are actually gonna be there, and how are you sloping the land?
We're proposing one. Everything is actually naturally draining from east to west. So if I could pull our erosion control plan. So you can see here the grade naturally falls in this direction.
Okay.
So we're just gonna catch everything with the diversion swell to the backside.
It'll just be a contour of the land
Yes.
type soil? Okay. Do you have any other questions from the board?
Any ledge?
Any ledge?
Rock, hard
Rock.
rock, if you
Oh,
get
I
a
think
blast, whatever.
there- I
It would
think-
prevent you from creating that, contouring the proper way that you're proposing.
Right, so they're not gonna actually grade the site at all.
Okay.
They're either gonna drive a
Alright.
post or they're
Yeah.
gonna use a ballasted system.
Well, I'm talking to create, so you hit that diversion swell that you're talking about.
Right. I'm not sure
Okay.
they're gonna have to do
Okay,
it.
all right.
I'm not on the board,
Okay.
I'll wait,
I'll wait. I'll wait. Kyle, go ahead.
Can you, point out where the fence is gonna be and where the gate is gonna be for everybody?
The fence is,
The back to the colored page, it is marked so people can see it.
so the yellow, or the orange is actually our proposed fence line. Our access drive's here, we have our fence gate here, and then it'll just be a double hung.
Do you tie into the power lines, or do you come out to Snake Hill Road?
I believe they tie in, up here along Snake Hill Road.
I can do the peer review.
Good. Alan, if you'd mind doing a peer review?
Very quickly summarize, again, Graves Engineering reviewed your submittal, and as you know, about 3 dozen comments, which is actually less than usual. I mean, normal projects even can have 80 or 90 comments. To summarize for everybody, most of the comments are related to requesting more information on stormwater and making a few suggested changes here and there on drainage design for the retention basin or swales leading to
Right.
it. And so you obviously work on that for our next iteration of this. I wanted to point out 2 other items and just make a suggestion on each. One, item 35, Mike is just flagging for everyone's attention to double check with the fire department that the proposed T turnaround at the end of the driveway, from eyeballing it, he's wondering whether it's sufficient for the fire vehicles we have in town. So what I'll do is I'll forward that to the fire chief
Okay.
and also to the deputy chief. The 2 of them will review these together. The deputy chief is also the building commissioner.
Okay.
And then if I can just read one and see what your feeling about it is. Number 31, information on the plans is needed regarding tree clearing, stump removal, and final ground cover. Typically for solar array projects, trees are cut in areas outside the perimeter fence for shade control, but stumps are left in place. These areas are then allowed to naturally revegetate. Areas inside the fence, including the swales and basins, are noted on your plan to have the trees cut and the stumps removed. Those areas are then reseeded using the on-site loam with a low-growing mix appropriate for solar facilities and stormwater purposes. Sheet C-7 includes 14 different seed mixes, but none are called out for use on the site. You shall review and revise as necessary. So he's saying two things. Get more specific on the vegetating underneath.
Okay.
But also that first part of it, he's basically saying he doesn't have enough information from you regarding how you're proposing the details on the tree clearing, stump removal, and the final ground cover. Do you want to wait until you give us a revised plan or add anything now? It's your choice.
So what they'll do is they'll just cut the trees to the ground, within 6 inches to the ground, and just leave any natural vegetation there.
Okay. And again, I think what you're hearing uniformly is we really need some more information. Either voluntarily cut back the clearing from the
Reduce
periphery of the fence, or provide us information of, so from an engineering point of view, of what is necessary versus preferable.
Right.
And we'll have Mr. Andrade review that.
Okay.
But I really think there's room here for modification to save a lot more buffering when it comes to the front of Snake Hill Road.
Okay.
And as the chairman said, possibly also to the east.
Okay.
So,
Absolutely, I'll review that.
thank you.
Do you have any other questions? All right, if we can open it to the public at this time, state your name and your
Yes.
address.
Kendra Underwood, 30 Snake Hill Road. This would affect us immensely. Ray and I came in and viewed the plans, and we would really urge you to push and leave existing foliage there, existing trees. That would decimate our view. We've been there
Right.
for 40 years, and that is basically all of our property abuts that, and we go right down the hill for the most part, and that would just take out the whole woods right there. There's great horned owls, deer, everything there. We have horseback riding trails, hiking trails over in there, so we would really appreciate if you could move back that, taking out all of those trees there and leave an existing foliage around that area.
Okay.
Yeah, like he suggested, you know, and then push it back, you don't need to go 150 feet, put trees.
No, the shuttle one's not that great.
And also the access road in, I don't know if you've checked, Snake Hill Road is a very dangerous road. I don't know how you could possibly get some of those things, the construction equipment, up and in that access road to put your panels in there. I don't quite know,
Well, they'll get it.
if
They will
Snake
get
Hill's
it.
only gonna be closed for, through traffic or what. But,
I got one quick question. I forgot to get your name in the beginning.
Josh Crumpler,
Josh, how would you spell last name?
CRUMPLER.
Thank you.
Ma'am, our engineer actually is flagging that for your attention too under item 33. It should be noted that a crushed stone driveway on such steep slopes can present issues for vehicles, especially emergency vehicles, which could rut and lose traction. The turnaround should be graded relatively flat for maneuvering. So we run into this very common around town in some of them, that to revisit the design of the driveway sloping and such per the item that she's raised.
Okay.
So if you could revisit that in the revision and work directly with our engineer on that,
Right.
would be helpful. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Do we have any other comments from the public? Yes.
I live on Carpenter Hill.
State your name, please.
Robert Laflamme, Carpenter Hill Road.
We're up here.
Now, when I look out my second floor window, bedroom window, am I gonna see this thing?
No, I don't think you will.
There's
I don't
Carpenter
think
Hill
I wanna know.
Roads.
It ain't
Way
that
over
far,
here.
because I can, you know,
I
I
mean,
can throw a baseball ball from my house right to the swamp there.
Oh,
So,
well, we're not.
so don't make it look like we're out
Well,
of town.
we're over
You
here.
know, we're here.
Okay.
Now, what are you gonna do with all these streets? These are all coming down here? The
No,
ones that
sir.
are on the slope?
No, sir. Everything.
Yeah, these are windbreakers for us, you know, we're up on that hill.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So anything east of the green line, we're not touching.
All right, so that will leave you
But I
too.
still don't
You
know
won't
how
be
far
able
I
to see it.
am.
You're way up here.
Yeah, but
No,
that doesn't tell me
It's
that 1 feet.
it's
Yeah.
over.
It's on the edge of the map.
If you flip to the first sheet, there's a locus, and you could show them on the small locus how far away Carpenter Hill Road is. it would help him, the gentleman visualize.
That's why we're asking them to revisit the, tree line cutting, to see if we can keep more trees
So-
on the property.
So, where I am, I need that for a windbreaker, you know?
The locus shows the distance from Carpenter Hill.
Yeah. Yeah, see, that's more like it, I mean, we're not out of town. You know,
Right.
The way it looked there, we weren't even concerned, but we are. They Carpenter Hill, I'm right here. Here's where I live, right here. And this guy here lives right here.
Right next to you.
And that's, we were concerned about the sill here.
I was off on my scale
You know what I
when I
mean?
was showing.
If you're gonna clear that, I mean, you'd have to put some trees or something along with Carpenter Hill.
We're not touching anything
Okay.
along Carpenter
If you
Hill
still
Road.
need to follow up.
Bob, in the fall, we're
Yeah,
gonna be able
we
to
can do
see
the
it,
U-tip.
but in the summer, you won't be able to see it.
Yeah, fine, fall, you can
Oh,
see,
no, I summarized it.
you can see 169 in the fall. you know.
Then my next question would,
Sure.
being able to see this. Now, if I see this, it's gonna lower the value of my house, not that it's worth millions as it is. Now, does the town give you some type of tax break or electric break because of this?
We've had people bring up concerns about valuation, and there's been no documentation that, given the distance, that any of the houses you're
Oh,
describing
I need
are
to
will
be
be
in
in
the bottom
effect.
of Carpenter Hill when I look out the backyard and see 20
Yeah,
acres of
there's
solar.
there's no corroboration anywhere in Massachusetts that given the distances we're talking, there will be any effect. You
Although
could
for
ask-
us, I think it would be different.
You could ask a real estate appraiser, and we can't legally take into account either an increase or a decrease in our review and our decisions. It's just the way real estate markets work or don't work. For every person who may come along and say, I don't wanna buy a house because of something next door, another person would shrug and say, it's fine by me.
Yep.
You know, it's just the way it works.
I have another question. How many solar panels are gonna be put in Charlton?
Oh, you mean commercial facilities? The way it works is you need a three-phase line to connect in. National Grid is three-phase lines. At this point in time, from the 5 we've already approved and the 3 we're reviewing right now, 50% of the line capacity is filled by those projects. So we anticipate that there's still gonna be a lot more over time around town. We don't know how many, but over the next 2 to 3 years, I would say a minimum of, and I'm saying just a minimum, at least around town, 7 to 8. Some of them are as small as half a meg, which is about a 4-acre site. Others would be about the size of this one. So there's still another couple of years while the three-phase lines that National Grid own can be filled up, and after that, there's capacity and not room for any more.
Just Manning, this was all farmland. I've been there 57 years, right here. And you know, down the road, you got that new solar panel. Across the street, you got the sewer department. Come up, you got Stewart's. You go a little further, you got Tennessee Gas.
Right.
Go a little further, you got the convention center down there. Across the street, you got Millennium. Now, I didn't benefit once by any of this, except more traffic. We got cars going there now, it's like, the expressway. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, I mean, there was only like 5 farms there. You know that, with the wells, the wetlands, the caplet,
They change over
the
time.
mans, and, where Underwood is now.
But at some
Since
time,
this
it's
is
electric rates.
established,
And I mean, no, I'm just saying that, how come they dumping everything on Carpenter Hill? What is this?
Well, it's happening in every community, everywhere, that people who own land that isn't developed, Massachusetts is the state laws are very pro allowing people to do more stuff, and communities do change. We do the best we can, and that's why we have these permitting processes, to try to lessen the negative impact, but it's hard to accept, and I fully understand, I go through it where I live too, about, people are infilling and everything changes, and we try to do our best through these permitting to
Yeah, I
do the best we can.
understand that, but I mean,
But what is
you
the
don't seem
benefit
like
of
you're
all these
doing
solar
very good,
farms to
very
these
good at
electric
it, because
rates
then
go
within a
down?
mile and a half, we got
Yeah.
all this industry.
It's,
You know what I mean?
the laws are very pro property rights of, if you haven't developed yet, you get to develop in a range of things across
Too
the whole
bad it's a
state.
farmland, the land is
Yeah.
there. See,
The
that's what-
community is urbanizing, you're
You
right.
know, all this green stuff is wonderful, it's wonderful for a guy who builds it, you know?
I
Gets all
think
kinds of
what Bob
rebates,
is
gets
trying
all
to say
kinds
is
of
there should be
incentives.
some consideration for the character and the nature of the neighborhood.
Yeah,
But before so much industry kind of infiltrates a nice,
yeah.
farm type community.
Well, it is not an industrial zone,
not
but the
saying
problem is commercial solar is exempted in Massachusetts, in terms of restricting to the degree people would like. So when it comes to commercial solar, They're scattered in every community in residential areas. The problem that you saw is Charlton is the second to last town in Massachusetts to adopt its first zoning bylaw. This town never had a zoning bylaw until 1987. That allowed Karl Storz to come in with no zoning and plop themselves in the middle of a very rural area. Zoning doesn't allow a repeat of that, but they're pre-existing and they have the right to expand and stay. So you're unfortunately the recipients of a pre-zoning pattern that's very rare across the state, and it's unfortunate I mean, 1987, every town other than a town in the Berkshires and Charlton had zoning, and people could do whatever they want until just a generation ago, and you're stuck with a lot of that in your neighborhood. So.
Is there any solutions?
Now, could they get any bigger? Could you guys get any bigger?
If they were to expand, they would expand this way. We're almost bound on the east side due to the wetlands.
And you're not going beyond the stream,
We're not impacting anything on the other side.
the other side of that stream that goes
stream.
through, where there's a culvert going underneath the.
Correct. We're kind of bound between the wetland and the stream.
Right. I'm sure solar panels are good neighbors and they're very quiet, but I think our biggest concern is that you're basically, with that plan, wiping out all of Snake Hill and the aesthetic value of what you're seeing there that would be totally, gone.
Yeah, especially with them people, they live right across
When you
the
talk
street, they
about
own all that
affecting
land.
property value, that's our land on the other side, right down through the other side of the hill, so.
I mean, Tennessee Gas took part of their land already, on the other side now. You guys wanna take the front part of it.
Right, it's a
Okay, if
beautiful, beautiful
you don't mind,
Should be
we've
my
got,
lawyer.
we've got one more gentleman that'd like to ask a question, and
Ken Kelly, 167 Carpenter Hill Road. I live at, my property splits the top of Snake Hill. So we'd see the whole thing. One of our biggest concerns, I know, the lifespan of a panel is how long?
Approximately 30 years.
Okay.
Wow.
And they'll be maintained for 30 years.
That's correct.
After that, what happens? I'm not gonna die in 30 years, I hope.
I'm gonna let them.
I won't be around,
So in 30 years, what's gonna happen to this site? Have you
I'm gonna
thought
let-
out and
De-
made a
decommissioning
decommissioning
process.
I can answer that question
Thank
for you. I'm gonna let Alan address that question about decommissioning the solar farms.
The planning board requires and has every legal right to require decommissioning insurance, and we mandate it for every project unless it's in an industrial zone. So what they will do is we'll give them a sample from the recent one we did on Carpenter Hill Road. They'll provide a dollar amount for the cost of decommissioning. Our engineer reviews it. Our engineer will then either accept that or recommend a higher amount. Then they put together the legal documents that they're providing the decommissioning funding. So if in 30 years they choose to, if it gets abandoned versus they keep it going by swapping out panels, we're completely covered to step in legally and use the money that they posted to completely restore. Now, there's several instruments. It can be an insurance policy, it can be a bond. The Nexamp company on Carpenter Hill Road is actually posting cash. They feel very confident that every 10 years they'll revisit the instrument. So they posted 6 months ago a 10-year cash posting through the planning board with the town treasurer in an interest-bearing account. In 10 years, they'll either renew that or they'll switch over to a bond. So in 10-year increments, we revisit it, but it's 100% covered. Only the board can access it. No one can block that. And that's supposing that they either don't cooperate someday or they abandon it. However, I ask you a question. Your client's plans would most likely be, I would assume, that after the life of a panel, you're gonna replace and keep going? Or do you have in your mind that these projects have a certain lifespan and then you don't use them anymore? It's a curiosity question.
So back in North Carolina, that's where I'm from. Solar has absolutely just expanded exponentially there. Most of the leases that we see there are similar to the project that was here previously. It's a private firm. Most of those leases that we've seen there are either 15 to 20 years with 2 5-year escalators or 5-year renewals. So after about 30 years, they are anticipating that the panels are going to be outdated and they're not going to yield as much. So then they're going to either remove them or, as Alan alluded to, they may replace the panels. The inverters that they have inside inside the array layout, which actually converts it from AC to DC or DC to AC, I get that confused. Those are actually replaced about every 5 to 10 years.
And again, we'll give you the sample of the one that the board just did with Carpenter Hill Road. Prior to the issuance from the building commissioner of your certificate to operate, to get up and running, you'd have to get back on our agenda, the board would review it with our engineer and finalize it.
So do we know if in 20 or 30 years we're gonna be looking at decommissioned solar panels or a revamped, you know, what is going to exist there?
So typically what we've seen is there is a decommissioning plan to take everything out after 30 years.
But what about this plan?
This plan, I'm not sure,
That's
since
what I'd like
since the ultimate owner is National Grid.
Could you then, through the board, could you then, for our next hearing session, ask your client the question of what their goal is in that respect, so we have an idea of what their long-range thinking is?
Yes.
Thank you.
Bill White, 6 Snake Hill Road.
Sure.
Is that gonna be cleared right down to the power lines on Snake Hill Road?
We're actually not clearing all the way to the power lines.
Hmm?
We're not clearing to the power lines.
They're not?
On the
Okay.
west side.
Okay,
Katie Brook.
what
I have one more short question, Peter, if I can.
Sure.
On the retention pond, when it overflows, and with the storms we have and the winds and everything else that we have in this hill, I know that someday it will overflow. There's a stream that runs there. What kind of secondary? You show one pond, and being, you know, in my field of work as a plumbing engineer, I know that one pond doesn't usually cut it unless you have some kind of retention or waterfall effect where it's cascades and it soaks into the ground. We all count on the groundwater on this hill vitally because we don't have much of it up there. So I'm wondering how you're going to re-entrain the water into the ground if you can create something like that versus an open pond. Get the stuff in the ground again. Because right now, with all the trees, it goes into the ground quickly with the root
Correct.
systems.
So we're meeting all the state and federal requirements for the design of that basin. I believe Graves provided some comments, and we're actually going to increase the size of the basin to allow more for that infiltration into the ground.
The backup to that is Katie Brook.
We need to move on, Mr. Chairman. Let's run it again.
Well,
so we're actually we're
Excuse me,
upsizing.
the chairman has to speak.
I'd like
Wait,
to,
bottom?
okay, we do have other agendas to get over tonight.
Down the bottom.
We're gonna be, I'm gonna be making a motion to continue this hearing to March 18th, and at that time, they will be resubmitting some things, and we've taken your concerns tonight with the clearing and retention
You can
ponds.
talk this thing to death, you know what I mean?
And
It is what it is, you know?
we're gonna
At
go
what
with that.
time?
Please let Chairman speak.
It's gonna be March 18th. I believe the time is gonna be around 7:25.
Right here?
Yes.
It'll be in this room. We do not send out notices for the second public hearing. It is gonna be on the website, and, you know, you can call the, planning board here if you forget the date, but mark your calendars for March 18th, and, hopefully at that hearing, we'll address some of your concerns. Do I have a motion to continue, Snake Hills, site plan review to March 18th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
How soon can you get us revisions for Graves to review in time for that evening?
We're working on those right now to have everything.
General, I can tell you right now, since it's a Wednesday today, if we can get it no later than next Tuesday, he can turn it around for the 18th.
Perfect.
What I'd like to ask you to do is, if it's possible for you tomorrow, to call Jane or Alan. I notice you're here by yourself tonight and you're not been able to take notes. Some of our concerns.
Correct.
you may forget as you leave the door.
Yeah.
So if you could check with Alan, I know you're going back down where you gotta go, so, if there's a way of checking with Alan and Jane.
Absolutely, I'll get my guys to give these guys a call.
Sounds good. He's got a good team, and Jane and I can keep working with him.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Have a good one.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, we appreciate you caring, we know you care, and we'll see you definitely in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Mr. Jobs, I'll see you.
I think.
Can you take it in the hall? We have another group of people. Thanks. No problem, we just have other people.
Panels are facing west on that, so we're relying on what on that plan, maybe. We've gotta correct that or they're gonna get their shadow lines wrong.
Yeah, right, yeah.
We've got some folks, thank you for coming in tonight. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Hold it right up to her, and then we just threw it on top
Good
of the
meeting, at least you
trailer.
get some work up. Good man.
You did a good job.
I don't know when we're there. Thanks for your patience. Oh, no problem. One of you guys, move that one down. That one there, and I'll bring one of these. Sure.
Thank you for being patient with us. Not a problem. Didn't realize the first one was gonna go as long as this one. One fantastic, one fantastic.
Tracy, right?
That's correct. I have my last 3 business cards here. And also the sign-in sheets you were passing around seem to be for public hearings, so
Right,
we didn't
just for the
sign
public
those. If
hearing.
there's anything else you need us to sign, it will take care.
If I can summarize to refresh everyone's memory, Tracy and I have had a few conversations, and John Parise is here from Casella, and also, just for the record, Robert Kirsch from Wilmer Hale, from Hale and Door, actually.
Used to be here.
Yes, it shows you how old I am. I always call it Hale and Door. That's right. Just to refresh everyone's memory, because I briefed the board prior to this evening, they've already had an introductory conversation with the Board of Health and with the Select Board. And what their interest is ultimately moving forward in whatever manner is required through a process of proposing to eventually take the 6 acres of land that Casella owns in Charlton, abutting this Southbridge operation, and expand in terms of landfill activity. They're having conversations with the Board of Health, because eventually they would apply for a site assignment. They're having conversations with the Select Board in terms of whatever's required in that world.
Post-agreement.
And Tracy has mentioned also that they're initiating a first step MEPA contact communication and possible permitting. What we've talked about, and they wanted to introduce themselves tonight, give a general conversation with you guys for a little while before we move on to Zero Point Engineering on their item, is the concept of, if they move forward, what would be the manner through our zoning bylaw? And I can get into some ideas and options and brainstorming in a few minutes, but I'll be quiet. Just I did that introduction, and now anything you'd like?
I'd like to take you through the board
Sure.
real quick. Okay, so as Alan mentioned, we have been undertaking some master planning at the landfill. And part of that would include a MEPA filing for the projects that we have planned at the landfill. So as we were walking through that process, and I'll orient you in a little bit, but this is the specific area that we're talking about. This is the Southbridge Charlton line right here. It's a bit of an irregular line. And this is obviously to the north, so you have H-Foot Road in Charlton traveling this way. This is the new commercial drive that was just recently built, and then you kind of continue around to Ayers Road and Berry Corner Road. So as part of that MEPA process, we were looking at the area to the north, and the Charlton line essentially runs almost halfway down this yellow or orange peninsula that you see here. So in part of doing that, the area that's in Southbridge is already site assigned. It was site assigned originally with the major portion of the landfill. But this, obviously the portion in Charlton is not. So as part of going through the MEPA process, we looked at this area and said, that it couldn't be realized for landfilling without the town of Charlton. Landfills are built in 3-to-1 slopes, so you couldn't build just the Southbridge side without the Charlton side there. So that's how the conversations came about, to discuss with the Board of Health and the Selectmen about if there was interest in pursuing this limited project in Charlton for the landfill expansion. So that's essentially what's brought us here today. And just to take you through quickly to orient you just a little bit more. The area that you see that's in white here is the existing landfill now. H-Foot Road comes out of Charlton and turns into Barefoot Road, which takes you back down around the Southbridge Airport. And then this little negative space here is the blue building that Casella built right off of Commercial Drive. So I'll turn it over to some of your questions, or if John or Rob have anything to add to that. But this space, the entire Orange Peninsula here, is a total of, do you know the acreage, John, off the top of your head?
I just know that, I know the Charlton piece is like 3.5 acres.
Correct, and that is on land that's already owned by us. But the entire build-out of that area would essentially be 1.7 years of landfill space. And that would be the end of the project. You see, we have wetlands here to the west, wetlands here to the east, and just off, you see just a little bit of the Tennessee gas pipeline that's there as well.
So one of the things I did was I invited a few people right after Christmas. A couple of the selectmen came, some of the Board of Health. We had the conservation.
And so, a couple representatives from Water Sewer Department.
And one of the things that's unique to this area is we already have the dirt in the area, so when you're up there walking, you can actually see what the landfill is going to look like, which is kind of rare. Usually you're like trying to picture what the thing would look like. And the other thing is that we went through is we have wetlands on both sides, and we have Tennessee gas to the north. So it's a limited project. It's not, you know, something that's going to go on for years and years. It's one defined area that we asked the people, some of the board members, if they were interested in us pursuing it. So that's kind of where we led ourselves to you guys, because we need to go to a town meeting and change the zoning.
You said this is that land you currently own?
Correct.
Now, how close is that proposed new section, close to, because Ellie Pond, Eleanor Lane goes proximity to.
Yeah. Could you maybe, Tracy, could you do us a favor?
Yep.
Could you roughly point on the zoning map where you are here? I think that would help the board
Yeah, I
orient
think
a little more.
we're over. Yeah, see that weird top hat from right there? That is this right here. Oh, that is this that jets out.
Yep.
So this I think is one of the houses in Ellie Pond.
Okay, gotcha. All right,
Okay,
just for
if I'm
proximity.
oriented correctly, and I think this is our first neighbor. There might be one a little bit closer on the other side of H-Foot.
Kurt, you
right where
live
the
right
map
over there,
breaks
right?
off.
She's doing good.
How you doing?
So yeah, obviously it's kind of weird the way it's set up. This is the Southbridge piece closer to Charlton, and this is the piece in Charlton that we were looking to change the zoning.
If I can throw out what we talked about in what I thought was a very good brainstorming conference call last week. And Kurt had been part of the dialogue on my end too, as zoning enforcement officer, over procedure. One option I think we agreed would not be the way to pursue, because I think you'd have difficulty getting through a town meeting in general of about 80% of the town is this zone, agriculture. So if you do the simple thing of just propose changing a use line, then you're changing that use line for the whole zone, and the average person would probably say at town meeting, well, what about the rest of the town, what about other people? What we were more looking toward as logic and maybe win-win for people down the line is the concept of an overlay district. What I threw out there, what an overlay district, to refresh people's memories, we have other types of overlays in town. We have historic overlay. Every town is required to do an adult entertainment overlay. We have cell tower overlays on non-camouflaged, that type of thing. Traditionally, in land use planning in Massachusetts, you want to struggle and avoid when the Attorney General reviews a zoning revision on an overlay that, or a zone change, that you're down to just one little parcel that would smack of what they call spot zoning. In our conference call, Rob had some information, if you could share with the board in the conversation, that you felt the specific of this, even if you went with one, you felt confident in our conversation could belay the spot zoning. Maybe you could elaborate a little on that?
The spot zoning usually is an issue when it's just the one property that's gonna benefit from it. And here, if this change goes through, while there will be benefit to the property owner, there's also gonna be a substantial benefit that goes to the community, because there will be a host agreement, there'll be a revenue stream, there'll be something very, very significant that goes in both directions. We would not expect this to be an issue for spot zoning with the Attorney General's office. And there's also the fact that it's already abutting a use that's been established for many, many years now, and one that goes through a very, very intense regulatory process. So there's no, it's not just a one-off. There's gonna be a lot of scrutiny. There already is to the portion of the landfill that Tracy pointed to originally, and there'll be a whole other round of scrutiny that goes to anything in addition to that before anything else happens. So it's gonna be engineered as a whole. It's not just gonna be this isolated, that one parcel of the extended segment that's in Charlton.
I'm just a little jittery that if I were in your shoes, I'd want some informal feedback, if I were you, from the AG's zoning review staff. Because I've just never seen that. It's not been my personal experience of this type of use coming forward and doing that. I just haven't experienced that. And when I've seen it in other types of, like if someone was proposing changing zoning for, say, residential development, you hit the wall immediately. I hear what you're saying, and it sounds a reasonable perspective. But I'd hate to see you go through everything and then hit the wall a month or so after a town meeting in which someone at the Springfield office says, sorry, I see you at spot zoning, I'm turning you down.
Don't worry, we're not,
No?
we will not get there at that point without having had a conversation.
Good, good. That's, I'm just trying to be helpful in process and avoiding landmines when people are working together to try to get something approved per bylaws and regulations.
So obviously, there's a lot of hurdles that we have to do, and that's really sort of the business that we're in. The first one is our MEPA filing, which is basically lays out our master plan, which in our master plan is what potentially could be a landfill. Not will be, but potentially. They wanna know the scope of the possible project. So we're preparing that right now, and we're getting ready for a March 16th filing with the environmental office in Boston. We have to go through that time frame, and hopefully we're successful. That could take anywhere from 3 to 6, 8 months for us to get that. Meanwhile, while we're doing that, we would probably try to talk with the town manager, town administrator, Robin, and the selectmen about a host agreement. Hopefully we can come to some agreement on that, and then hopefully after that, we would come and hopefully apply for a zoning change and maybe make the October special zoning meeting. And then once that gets done, we still have to go to DEP and actually get permits to actually build the thing.
Site assignment, then DEP.
Site assignment, excuse me, I missed the site assignment portion, which is through the Board of Health, and then a DEP permit. So there's multiple times that the public will get chance to voice their opinions.
So there's like a lot of parallel lines you're running at the same time, hopefully to come at one
Yeah.
point.
And you know, to be honest with you, I hadn't, you know, this was like I said, on our master plan, we have other areas in Southbridge that we're gonna be building, and I had got a call from Robin and said, we'd like to see if you'd wanna pursue the zoning change now. Well, it kinda hit me like, oh my God, I go like, let me step back and think about it, cause I hadn't really thought about moving forward with a zoning change really until probably 2017 or 2018. So I said, well, let me see if I can pull everybody together and see if there's something that that we could accomplish. So that's kind of where we're at, what's happened over the last, since Christmas.
So Charlton had reached out to you
Yes.
first? Okay.
I reached out to them to come out, like I said, right after Christmas, and we did a tour. We had a bus, and we went out and looked at the area. The other nice thing, or not nice, but is that really this area, no trees are gonna be cut. They're already cut. It's just, like I said, it's a limited area, that, you know, we already have to put all our, stormwater in. Everything, since it's such a small area, it's really sort of, it allows the landfill to stay open a little bit longer. It allows the drop-off area for both towns to use a couple extra years, so, along with probably other benefits to the town of Charlton, which we haven't even talked about yet.
But obviously, to even contemplate the project, it needed to be part of our MEPA filing, and that's why John really reached out, because obviously we would never put anything in a MEPA filing involving Charlton without.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I want him out there, because it is such a small, really, in the scheme of what we're doing here. This is a 15-year plan. So for the piece in Charlton, which is a year, I told him, I said, if you guys are like dead set against this, we don't need to go through it if, you know, I'm going to be walking through waist deep snow. So we had a public hearing where we had the selectmen and the Board of Health, and I was on vacation at that time, but Tracy was there, and they said, you know, well, move forward.
Do you use an area engineering firm on things, a civil engineering firm for things?
Oh yeah.
Who do you use?
Well, we use a bunch of different people. We use Mike Loyne once in a great while. We use Sanborn and Head. We also use
CEC?
yeah, but our wetlands we use Stantec.
A suggestion, but you can go differently. Again, Burton Engineering is so experienced. You saw they were here earlier tonight, and they have represented and assisted clients on the mechanics of their zone change proposals, such as getting the petition together, helping with the signatures, doing the legal description, mapping the overlay, and submitting and presenting with you. Burton Engineering, I think, bringing them on board in the near future and working with this board between now and the town meeting you'd shoot for in the fall, if that's what you're shooting for, I think would be the way to keep it flowing, you know?
Yeah, we have an agreement with them, and they do work for us
Yeah,
all the time.
because as this board knows, when you're either changing a zoning district or creating an overlay, you need legal description, you need maps, you know, and they've done that before here, so, and you can go with somebody else, I'm not saying, but they are a go-to. They're before this board constantly, and they've done it for many other people for similar types of zoning map proposals.
Proficient in your process.
Yeah. The other thing is, I mentioned that usually the planning board is looking for the permitting process to be site plan review, not just by right. Nothing goes by right anymore in the 21st century. And you saw it's administrative site plan.
No, we were fine with that.
Can I ask a question, Alan?
Sure.
Where you're approaching, it seems that you're approaching two different ways here. One is a zone change for this area, and the other is the overlay. Mechanically or process-wise, what is the difference, or what is the advantage or disadvantage?
Yeah, with an overlay of any type, and feel free to jump in because I know you've done this too, but with an overlay of any type, the underlying zone stays.
Right.
But the idea is you're layering within a reduced area within the wider 80%, only within the boundaries of that overlay, the new thing you're proposing, which in this case would be allowing via site plan operated landfill. And then you would also have some language in the bylaw, as we've done with the other overlays, describing the overlay, mentioning all the specifics of it. So you're doing a map amendment by adding the overlay, and you're doing a bylaw amendment similar to the way we've done the other overlays.
Set of rules that apply to that overlay.
Yeah, and it doesn't take away from anything underneath, it just layers something within a reduced area of the bigger agricultural district.
So if a zone change was proposed, we might be creating a new zone.
Yeah, but the type of zone is an overlay zone. We currently have, I think, 7 zones in town. You're not creating an 8th traditional meat and potato zone.
Yeah, that's the overlay.
Right.
The other method of doing some sort of zone change.
Yeah, then if you did a traditional zone, I think then no offense, I really think you've got a problem with the AG of a tiny little zone just for a couple acres. But in overlay, you don't have the problem the way Rob is describing.
And
Overlays
by
are,
doing that,
Yeah.
we don't, as I raised the issue is that you just said it, if the community said, okay, in an A zone, you can have an operating landfill, that opens up the whole
80% of the
community.
town, exactly.
And that's not gonna go anywhere.
I think you're giving people assurance that it's well managed, it's focused through the overlay concept, which is why other types of overlays have come forward too.
Now, by allowing this to have an overlay, did we just open up the door for somebody else to say, I got a piece of agricultural land here, I want an overlay now?
In theory, but usually overlays are pretty limited, like right now, if you look at our legend, again, under case law from about a generation ago, every town in Massachusetts, according to the state appellate courts, are required to do a tiny, small adult entertainment for freedom of speech. Historic overlays are very common. The cell tower land use evolution in Massachusetts for 30 years or so has brought in overlays. Usually you don't hear that many people coming in, but in theory someone could say that, and your answer could be we either are okay with it or we're not. You could support it or oppose it. I don't think you're opening the door for a flood of them. You may be making people more aware that the concept exists. I think it's kind of tough for somebody to say, for instance, you're mostly single family in a zone, can I have a duplex overlay? There really isn't such an animal. And so you could just say, we're not gonna support that type of thing, you know. It's a very good question though, will it give other people ideas, and maybe, maybe not, my guess is not, but.
I just would hate
Yeah.
to see somebody that owns a 300-acre spot somewhere
Right.
come back to the board and go, come back to the town and go, wait, you gave it once,
Yeah.
why can't I have it? I
Yeah.
got 300 acres.
Yeah. Your argument could be that you feel, you take them case by case, and this one is not appropriate for the following reasons.
Wouldn't it have to go to town meeting anyways?
Yes. Yes.
Even the overlay would have to go to town?
Yes, the overlay is a type of zone change, and it's the same as any other type of zone change. Petitioner submits, you hold an advisory hearing, you make a recommendation, 2/3 vote at town meeting. Yeah.
But we also think, going back to some of the points I made earlier to the chairman's question, I think that this will be pretty case specific. There is already, the very use, while not in Charlton, exists abutting on a significant portion of the land. It's very, very regulated. I mean, these guys deal with rafts of regulation and oversight. And the process, both in Charlton and in Southbridge, is going to really have to, it will all have to work together, because first there'll be a process of review by DEP just to make sure that the site assignment is going to work. Then locally, the land will be site assigned both in Charlton and Southbridge before any work can be done. It has to be approved on both sides for the changes. And then out of that process, there'll be requirements. This will be through your Board of Health now to oversee it. So it really, this is such a regulated process that I think you can protect yourself against some of the arguments that will come just by the assurances that the town is getting through the state oversight and the oversight of at least a couple of different town boards that are gonna be independently looking at this.
Knowing that we don't have any other landfill abutting our community, kinda makes me think that, somebody's not gonna use the overlay thing. It's not like you say, well, we abut Charlton, so did Southbridge, so give it to us now.
But also, from what they describe, it's a very stringent process for all the, boom, 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 you gotta go through to meet those criteria.
So at least we don't have another
Yeah.
landfill around us.
Right, no, I hear that.
Right. And if the board so inclines, at some point, we'd like to work with you on developing the warrant, for October. I don't like doing these types of things in a vacuum. I mean, the more input, the better, because, it just will set up for, it just sets up for, well, what are you doing, what are you not doing, and, it's, we're very public, and, at the landfill, so, everybody knows about it, so we're not gonna like slide or hide under a tree here, so.
Our objective is, before we would get to the town meeting, would like to have the support of this board, certainly, and hopefully to present it and have support from the finance committee and the selectmen and probably even the board of health. Maybe not the board of health, I'm just not sure procedurally. I think,
Right.
since they have to do the site assignment, I don't think I want them taking a substantive position, but we do want them to know what's going on.
Sure.
But because zoning changes can be controversial at times, we'd like to make sure that the boards that do have some influence and oversight have weighed in, that we've heard them and be able to incorporate your concerns into whatever we present.
Once the overlay is done, is it specifically written up by boundaries, sizes and everything?
Yeah, their
legal
submittal would
descriptions?
have that.
Yes.
They would have their engineer do both a legal description, meets and bounds or whatever, and also a map. What I can show them and refresh the board's memory beyond tonight as we move forward is I can pull files to show how we've done that before.
Then is there any chance of them coming back and saying, okay, we wanna make this bigger now?
Well, you know, that's a great concern, cause that came up, and we would invite this whole board at some point to come take a tour of the landfill, because when we brought the selectmen and the Board of Health up there, they go, well, this isn't as scary as we thought it was, because we were able to show them wetlands, Tennessee
Yeah.
gas,
We're
Sure.
physically limited, and then physically limited by
so we're,
Tennessee.
this is a one-off
That's it.
shot, so, and it's, like I said, it's so small in the scheme of our things, you know, that's why I kinda wanna know if we can get the support from the different boards, because it's not worth it for us to fight an uphill battle for 1 year of space. But in the same token, you know, and in all honesty, all the trucks drive through Charlton, and the landfill's in Southbridge, and, you know, I noticed, you know, I've been here since 2003, so I went through the site assignment in Southbridge and everything, so Tracy and myself, so, you know, I'm sensitive to that, I really am, so if there's a way that we can give the Charlton some host fee for all these trucks driving through the town, I'd like to be able to do it.
And that would be something you would negotiate probably with the Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd like to have that done before we go to the zoning change, because people are always, you know, people are gonna say, well, what's this mean for the town?
Right.
I wanna be able to say, well, here it is, versus, well, it's something we're gonna get to later on down the road.
It won't be trust me, it will be, here's
In
the
other words,
contract.
you're gonna show us 2 carrots or 1 carrot or no carrot.
Right.
You want-
2 sticks and only 1 carrot.
Right. Okay.
So that's okay.
Skip a question.
Skip, you,
Yeah, and the planning board's aware of the, they had a major blowout over there that impacted the wetland, you know, a bad situation. The blow, when I say a blowout, about the size of this wing that blew down, taking down trees in 3 feet in diameter. It took quite a few times, trial and error. They've got it, I believe, at this point, stabilized. Now they're gonna start to move more dirt up there. I mean, it's a real concern.
Well, that's one good reason for having site plan review. You raise a good point. Often people, at the past at town meeting, when zone changes come up, people say, we'll be on tonight. How do I make sure that there isn't like an erosion sedimentation problem or such? And the planning board has always at the microphone said, we go to site plan review and we have our engineer, they have their engineer, and those are the types of things we'll go over. So it's a good point you brought up, and that's the answer, that zoning is step 1 of the planning process, the site permit with the planning board is step 2.
You know, and that's a great point. As whether it's our contractor or us, you know, we're responsible. We're not perfect, so neither was our contractor. One of the things is you could, you know, if you talk to Todd Gerard, you can, you know, because he was out on the Christmas visit, and we had a weekly meeting at the site, construction meeting, and we were very transparent with Todd. He saw all the work we did, and he actually told the selectmen right in front of us in that meeting that, you know, these guys stepped up, you know, and fixed everything, and I'm very happy with it. So, in my eyes is, you know, yeah, we're not perfect, we did make a mistake, but it's what, you know, what's the character of Casella, as far as stepping up and fixing everything, to not only the state, but the town, satisfaction.
Maybe this isn't a question to ask now, but like the addition that you'd like to come into Charlton with, would it just be dirt to help hold what's there, or would it be waste and dirt going up?
So basically, what we have out there now, when you come out, hopefully, you'll see, basically, we just have a mound of dirt right now, we have grass on it, we have swales around the bottom, and we have a couple of ponds. So basically, what we do is we take all that dirt out of there, and then build what we call a bathtub, which would be the liner system. And then we would put the trash back in, basically, to the same grades that you'd see out there with the dirt now, and cap it. That was going to the point where, you know, we weren't gonna cut any trees. It's already right now, this area right now has already got the dirt on it. And we have, like I said, we already have this pond built. So all the runoff right now is going into the pond. But it's just clean dirt versus trash.
It would be worth your individual while to go on the tour. They have a mock-up of the construction of a cell. I don't think you've started work on the new cell yet. You've gotten permission to start putting trash in there.
Right, 7-4 is built, but we're waiting on DEP
Okay,
approval
so,
to operate.
I mean, it's messy. I would guess a little bit right now between the snow and the mud and the sun and stuff, but it's a really great opportunity to see a landfill in operation and all the stages of it.
So wear a pair of boots, not your loafers.
Definitely
Suede
not.
loafers are
The other thing that we have, which is just a side thing, is we're actually extracting the methane out of the landfill, and we're making electricity that we sell to the grid. Right now, we're a 1.6 megawatt plant, and next year, we're gonna go to 3.2, so we're gonna be putting a second engine in.
Interesting.
That's all we got, unless you guys got any questions, that's all we wanted to just introduce ourselves, basically, tell you.
I think Alan Carter explained the overlay pretty good. Kinda gives me a little better perspective. Don't really think there's other questions.
We'll be back to try to work, we'll coordinate with Alan to work on a schedule so that we can get to you for some sort of formal review in time, so that when the warrant goes up, it can indicate if the board would support it.
Okay.
We'd love to be able to do it that way.
For, like Kurt was saying, for the board to do a site visit, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, but if we do 3 members or more, it's considered,
Yeah.
There's a caveat for site visit.
Yeah, so what we could do is one or two things, either just a couple board members, we could post it, or you could have members on their own schedule go over too, you know.
We can
just wouldn't wanna
accommodate any
waste-
and all of that.
Just wouldn't wanna, you know, 2
Yeah.
of us go and then
Right.
2 of us
Yeah.
go.
Right.
You know,
What
everybody's
if we
time
were
is
coming
valuable.
to an open, we have open houses every year, does that same thing incur if it's a public event where everyone's invited?
You'd be okay, because we go through that with the regional planning agency, and the way it works is, you're not violating, not posting a meeting if they're outside of the community informational and they're not meeting to vote on something in their role in town. So the whole board could go to something like that, no problem. Or
Because
a-
we do a
or
public
quorum
invitation
could.
in the newspaper, open, it's
Yeah.
open to anyone.
And we wouldn't need a posting for something like that.
Right,
And
well, it's an option.
for instance, there's quarterly dinner meetings of the regional planning agency, the entire boards of many communities go, they're not posting, they've left their town, they're
Mhm.
attending something for, it's like going to a conference.
Sure.
Same type of thing.
The other thing we could do is, we could do a Friday and a Saturday for people who works, you know, Friday afternoon, or, you know, and some on Saturday, depending on people's schedules, and we could get a bus and give you the whole tour, show you the gas plant.
Yep.
And, whole liner system.
Road trip.
So does the snow melts.
Snow? Come on.
It's fertilizer.
Yeah.
Glad you're looking
Poor
at that
man's
one.
gold.
It's keeping the forest fire danger down for my
There you
other
go,
hat.
there you go.
It's true, it's very true. Good point.
Alright, I really appreciate you guys coming in tonight,
Thank
giving
you.
us
Thank
some,
you guys.
You
something
have our
idea.
information, if anything pops up in the meantime, we know how to get a hold of Alan.
Sounds good.
Yes.
We'll keep in touch.
Very good.
Glad, Kurt.
Thanks for your
you
time.
very
Great,
much.
thanks a lot, guys, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Get off on the right foot. That's good.
Hey, you matter o'clock, I wanna get that. Oh, I can't say that. told me 3 years ago, we're done by 8:30.
One meeting there's always one meeting over a time period that.
One per year or one per month?
I'd say one per year, one per year.
Well, what about the other one we had?
Perception of time is all in your head.
That's like the newest terminology in floodplains, okay? We stopped calling it the 100-year flood.
That's right.
Okay, it's the chance of a flood, a 1% of the chance of a flood occurring in this year.
Somebody told me today that this was the 100-year storm and that it will be another 100 years before we see it. And I told the person, I'll be dead by then.
So you won't see it.
I won't see it. Alright, through Alan.
Really quick intro, you know Brendan very well,
Yeah.
0 Point, and you recently completed his Depot Road site plan. He'll be bringing Castigian in for his next one, but on the other hand, he also had met with me recently, and he wants to familiarize yourselves with another solar, interesting, creative type of way of approaching, I call it checkerboarding, a network, as he's negotiated some utility connection opportunities with National Grid. So it's very unique. So rather than put together a traditional site plan and just submit and deal with myself and Mike Andrade and Kurt and others prior to as staff, I thought it made sense to come in for a little time tonight and familiarize the board from the very beginning of this concept. It's very interesting and different. And take it away.
Great. So thank you guys very much for your time. I know everything's running late, so I'll be brief. So as Alan mentioned, as you guys know, planning board approval for Skip's Depot Hill project a few weeks ago. You may not know that as part of the engineering review stage with National Grid, in order to add the additional solar capacity from the Depot Hill Solar project, National Grid determined that there were substantial infrastructure upgrades to really get your head around it. In order to build this project, there was a $650,000 additional expense. So above the normal project expenses of building the project, in order to install the project, it was an extra $650,000. So as you can imagine, financially, it really took a toll on the project. For the project of that size to pay that extra expense, it really wasn't too attractive financially. So, as Alan alluded to, rather than accept defeat and walk away from the project, basically, Skip and I drove around Charlton for a matter of 4 to 6 weeks, and we identified a number of sites with the intent of finding additional projects that would interconnect, and I'll explain this in a minute. The concept is we're going to find additional sites to interconnect to the same line to distribute that $650,000 cost across a number of projects. So we're looking at 10 additional sites. 6 projects are very, very close together, a group of projects, which will basically distribute that interconnection cost across all of these projects. So I brought in, the first page of this pamphlet is this map that you see here.
And they're smaller sites compared to a lot of what we've done, if you could just clarify that for the board.
Absolutely. So the smallest project in this group is a 0.5 megawatt, so about 3.5 acres. The largest project is a 1 megawatt, 1.5 megawatt DC. It's around 6.5 acres. So just to get your bearings, if you come south from Spencer down Route 31, Ronnie's intersection is right about here. Take a right onto North Sturbridge Street, hook around, and continue on North Sturbridge Street. There is a cluster of 6 projects, all right next to each other, all abutting each other. 3 on one side of the road, 3 on the other side of the road. If you were to head south down City Depot Road, there is 1 project off of City Depot Road. Yep. Then if you're familiar with the area, the bus lot, there's going to be an array basically behind the bus lot and behind this tree line, so you won't actually be able to see it from Brookfield Road here. And then if you're just up the street from the bus lot, there's basically it goes up a little bit of a hill. On top of this hill here, there's a pumpkin patch that we're going to be putting a small 3-acre array on.
So can I throw out a couple of names here, just so, the first set of property you were talking about was an island property.
Correct?
Okay. And the property over here, I'm not quite sure where it was.
Mhm.
And the other property is AJ Orlando's and across from AJ Orlando's.
Mhm.
So that,
Yep,
some
proximity.
references
Yep.
for people
Yeah,
who
correct.
use these
Yep.
old landmarks.
Yep.
Sure, sure, absolutely. And then the final, the 10th project is over here on Stafford Street, Cook's Farm.
Okay.
Behind the county store there.
Mhm.
So I guess the goal of you know, just keeping the communication line open, these projects have been submitted to National Grid several months ago, and they're very close to being ready for your site plan review. So I understand, you know, there's been a backlog with the weather and all sorts of things that have been going on, but just communicating with you that these projects are up and coming, and you know, just adding the fact that it's kind of special, as Alan alluded to. Financially, these projects by themselves don't really work, but as a group, all these projects together, which is kind of a testament to Skip and his effort with this, they all make for a nice group of projects. So
What is
that,
the one on
yeah.
the bottom?
This is Depot Hill. So this is
Skip project, okay.
The Castigian property, it just for your own reference, Alan mentioned is right here. So there's a 12th location, but that doesn't tie into that 600 some odd $1,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, question, any of these projects, are any of them, because we're all experiencing as National Grid customers, the increase in the rate in the larger monthly electricity bill. Are any of these projects looking into the possibility of giving some of the electricity, would it be to the townspeople in lieu of a break on property tax or assessment as a benefit to the people in the town of Charlton? Because it seems like Charlton is a very lucrative and, well, a very, a target area because of the overhead existing lines. And I'm just wondering for that, because that's all you hear people talk about is, because it's a new thing with the raised electrical bill per month. Is there any consideration?
Great question.
into
So
that?
we were in negotiations with the town of Charlton to sell them discounted
Yep.
electricity.
Yep.
They did decide to go in a different direction, but that would have been the main avenue. So we've got signed contracts with Drake, Lawrence, Housing Authorities, Warehousing Authority. We're negotiating with the town of Rutland.
Yep.
So we do all of the electricity, I won't say all, majority of electricity sold to housing authorities and municipalities.
Gotcha, okay.
Is there a reason the townspeople weren't aware of that negotiation going on?
I don't know.
I think that,
Yeah, absolutely.
just lack of paying attention. It's been there, Robin, the administrator has spoken at selectmen's meeting about power purchase agreements both for the town, and we did vote at town meeting for, the Hampshire Council of Government, power agreement. A little bit of time for that to come into play.
Right.
So, you know, do townspeople know that solar projects are going up and, you know, before they happen most times, unless they're right in their neighborhood.
Okay. Now, one comment, it is kind of our standard practice to have pre-meetings with the abutters. It was an idea, Alan had mentioned, very successful with the Castigian project. We have met with them, you know, on our own behalf. We will be doing that same practice with all of these projects. It's a very efficient way to, you know, get a lot of those preliminary questions out of the way. You can meet in the library for 2 hours and they can come up and touch and feel everything, so it works out pretty well.
And I'm not, I hope I'm not coming across saying is nobody knows what's going on. It's because proximity to a project, or any project, abutters are notified through the site plan review process. And when the hearing happens, then people, in a bigger general sense, become aware of a project, because it gets in the paper. Oh, planning board XYZ project, and people, I didn't know what was going on. Well, it was advertised as a public hearing in the paper, and all the required abutters were notified, and the gentlemen are certainly taking the most advantageous road and having community meetings for projects that they're doing, so.
It just, you know, it just seems like, you know, like you say, with National Grid is going everywhere in this community. It's like, wow, you really couldn't do something for the community? You know, make it feasible for our electrical use.
So from a tax standpoint, I mean, the additional property tax is
Correct.
$200,000 a year annually, so.
So we are getting something from that.
And there were residential home subdivisions under development, so we are gonna be taking place of 20 to 50 houses in that area, so.
So you get a revenue from that, which doesn't bring children to the school system and
Buses.
traffic and buses and police work and fire
Roads to plow
and plowing and everything. Okay, all right.
Brendan, how does it work with all these different sites? They're different owners?
Nope. So there's one investor, my partner out of Connecticut, that we jointly own these projects.
Okay.
So the 25-year operation and maintenance is something my company does, and
Yeah.
we'll be here for a long time.
So they're coming in as separate applications or one big application, or how's it gonna work?
Well, what I've suggested is, given the close proximity and it is a network, I've suggested that, with the exception of maybe if one or two of them are outlying, to really put them together as a comprehensive proposal. And, I mean, you look at the Nyland ones, they're also clustered together. At a minimum, I think the Nyland core should be one application.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes common sense.
Yeah.
We can go over more specifics as you work with your engineer and our engineer on the pre-app process.
Yep, absolutely.
Good idea.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for waiting.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a rare night. Because we had so many people for the first one.
Space station's never gonna wanna look at China.
It only goes over at night though, so.
Oh, okay. No glare. So they won't see us.
Right down at the end. You coming down Osgood?
I can leave that packet, Alan. Alan, I can leave that packet.
Thank you, thank you. We'll share it with the board.
Great, thank you.
We're missing one member.
Yeah.
Hey, it was nice to be able to help.
Thanks, Scott, thank you. I went to check my email for 1 second, and I thought I'd print this out.
Yeah, I heard they right behind my
Apparently
house.
Margaret
Oh, that's
Catherine
good.
Ridlack was
Yeah.
born at
Oh, no way.
344 and 9 pounds 6 ounces.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
They're coming in out of Maryland with a house site.
Yeah.
That's a big baby.
Yeah, great.
Yep, that was quick.
Yeah, but that was what time? 3:44.
She emailed at 1:18 that she's waiting
They're
to see
logging
if the
everything?
baby comes
They were.
today.
They're doing it. I
And
think
2
they're
hours,
doing
an
a
hour and a
side
half
by
later, baby came.
Wow.
Isn't there like a
tough
big
woman.
tree over there or something?
Yeah,
On
that's
the
a
opposite
different.
side.
Oh, okay, okay.
They're logging where the house,
Yeah.
where the house is.
Okay.
They're
Just
putting
10
the
pounds.
house. Oh, this is it?
Yep,
Really?
that's why she didn't come tonight. She had an
He had an
excuse.
Now Brendan's Clee's nephew, right?
He's through marriage.
Okay.
Not-
That's
not-
the relationship there.
Yeah.
Through marriage, Brendan's Clee Blaze.
Yeah, I think the way it works is it's Clee's brother-in-law's son-in-law.
Yeah.
So it's a marriage
That tie-in.
situation.
Yeah.
And that's how he connected with possibly leasing part of Castigian Farm for his next
Correct.
proposal.
Absolutely. Yep. That's the tie-in.
They didn't name her yet.
No, they did. It's
Yeah.
No.
It's all right.
Catherine,
Oh,
I'm sorry,
oh, I'm sorry, Margaret Catherine.
Margaret Catherine.
Okay, 'cause over here it just says female.
Ah,
I'm
the
looking up
hospital.
here. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was quick.
Good for her.
Yeah,
That's great.
344.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
yeah, that was fast.
That's cute.
Yeah.
She will get her papers in, right?
Yes,
They do?
she was, and Alicia's getting her papers. They both pulled their papers.
All right, can we get into growth management
Yes,
and see how the evening goes?
I'll be very brief on, go through a few quick items.
We have to carry some stuff.
Under growth management, trails planning has gone well. We had that meeting. Colin Novick came out with Samantha Eaton from his staff and met with me and Lisa Westwell. And thank you. And I'll leave this with Jane. And it was very, very productive in terms of the Charlton piece, as I mentioned at the last meeting. The next regional meeting I'm able to attend with my schedule, it's gonna be, and if anybody wanted to join us, it's in Worcester at the Greater Worcester Land Trust office, the afternoon of Monday, April 6th. I'll send an email out to the board if anyone does want to join us in Worcester. Otherwise, the next time they're out here, you could join us here in this office. That's more of a regional. They invite people in from about 10 to 12 towns every few months, and I wasn't able to make the last one because of basically a weather problem, but I'll be able to make this one. Also under growth management, just to let you know, the owners of the shovel-ready Griffin Road Business Enterprise Park have come to me about some ideas to get going on it. So I'll brief the board when they want to really choose one of the options of, in the upcoming building season, doing something there. It just shows, again, economy continues to improve.
The towing business, right?
No, this is the, what Ralph Nichols and Matt Sosek had designed between South Sturbridge Road and Griffin Road for a business enterprise park and industrial park on that 12 acres or so. So there's a phase 1 possibility there that we've talked about, and if they decide to shore it up, I'll update you as soon as possible and see how they want to proceed when the season begins. Also, just to keep you in the loop, as you know, we've talked off and on the past few years for the next phase of expansion up at Karl Storz, and their representative contacted me the other day. We hadn't talked in about a year, that they want to definitely, in the next 6 months, finish their design and then come in for site plan. So about half a year from now, it looks like Karl Storz's next expansion will be coming forward. And I'll keep them in the loop as they work with me and Mike Andrade on pre-app design. A couple other quick items. Just a reminder again that, look at the calendar, Saturday, March 21st, did I get the date right? Yep. Is again the statewide planning conference. They finally set up their webpage this week for registration. If anyone would like to go, we can definitely register you and pay for it. It's a $65 fee, and we have it in our budget. It's Jean's gone, Patty's gone, I've gone.
I don't think Patty will be on this year.
Not this year.
Did they have it on a test plenty of time, right?
Yeah. I'm a panelist this year. I was invited with Ralph Wilmer to speak on planning RFPs and RFQs. And that will also save us the registration fee. As a panelist, I don't have to pay. So,
There you go.
So we have
Did they
more.
have an agenda? I didn't see an agenda.
Yes, they just posted it yesterday.
Okay.
So I put in front of you a printout from their webpage of just the front page, but I will email you tomorrow a link or an address, and you can go right in. If you want to register on your own, we can reimburse you, or we can look into, you know, I think it's a little too late because it's a short period of time to pay up front through the town, but I can look into whatever process is easiest for everybody on registering. So any board members that would like to go, it's just a very informative day with a really good lunch. We were going to go into an executive session for about 5 minutes on a few items that we've been dealing with regularly. Other than that, just a reminder that on your next agenda, besides what you continue tonight, we have the special permit fitness center, which was scheduled for 7:15, that will go into the Alex Santos's building at the corner of Carroll Hill and Route 20.
When they come for a site plan visit, they need to show like the septic system, the well systems, all that stuff on the property, right?
Location, yes, they don't have to design it with us, they design that with Board of Health, but they have to show on the plan for information purposes, yes.
Okay, I don't know if this is the time or what, but, you know, stop me if it isn't. I got a phone call yesterday from a person who wishes to continue the miniature golf courses to go.
Which one, what?
Miniature golf courses.
Okay. They wish to what?
They wish to, they called me as the plumbing inspector.
Sure.
To see what requirements would be needed for
Oh, okay.
plumbing fixtures and stuff.
Sure.
They're running into a problem with the DEP
Mhm.
for drinking water.
Oh, in terms of, public water supplies, the whole permitting process?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does this project on Route 20 involve that too?
I don't know,
What was the public water supply? You hit the 27 person per day threshold?
yeah, I don't know if it triggers it, but if it does, Burton Engineering is on top of it. See, you're dealing with, he hasn't hired an engineer yet for the miniature golf, he's looking at the stuff himself, right?
He's just looking to see what it's gonna cost to do it and
Yeah,
stuff.
he should really ask an engineer for advice on that, because Burton is on top of that for each client, and Burton is the engineer for the fitness center. So I could check with Mike Loyne on the status of that for the Carroll Hill Road one.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, it's not a problem.
Yeah, he just asked me what would be, the plumbing code, what requirements would be.
Big goofy.
Told me to get back to him.
Yeah. Okay. I'll check with Burton on that one. Sounds good.
Um, do you have any other than?
Let me just double check. No, Mr. Chairman, thank you, those are my items for this evening.
I know we have some minutes to go through. Most of us are here, but, that are on the minutes. Do you wanna take the time tonight, or can we draft these till the next?
You could wait until you have the full board if you wish, it's your choice.
Stay and go through the minutes on this? Or you
Yeah,
wanna postpone the minutes, reading the drafts? Time and approve?
I want a time, my wife's gotta work tonight, I know I want a time limit.
Why don't we, if we can, why don't we
We'll
carry
table
these over
those
to
till
the
next-
table these till the 18th?
Sure, no problem.
You know where this is.
That's
good.
No.
Not having anything else, Alan?
Need adjourn and motion to enter.
Thank you. Joe Berthium's good. Joe Berthium's back here, the guy that sold it to him.
Okay.
Motion
That concludes this, I'd like to make a motion to close tonight's public hearing, and, I mean, not the public hearing, public meeting. Motion to close public hearing all night. A motion to close tonight's planning board meeting and, go into an executive session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And then pull the
Second.
board and then after, so.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to poll the board on, going into the executive session. Kyle?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Yes. That concludes this section. We could